Hello and welcome back. I am your astrology coach, and today we are going to talk about Saturn. That's right, Saturn often gets a bad rap. And oftentimes when we think about Saturn, we think of discipline, we think about being rigid, and there are some positives and some negatives to Saturn. Yes, that is true. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of Saturn on its own. So we're going to talk about Saturn, give you some details about the planet, and then I'm going to get into natally what it means in each house and what the transits might mean in each house. So there is a lot to it. Keep in mind, the information that I'm giving you is based on a bell curve. So it is not 100%, this is you, this is your child, this is your husband. It is based on a bell curve. Also keep in mind, if you've seen the other video on drawing up your own natal chart and you want to compare it or come back, look at this video. Keep in mind, if you have Saturn in conjunct or talking to other planets, that will certainly influence the outcome as well. And I do natal chart readings, so if you are interested, I can talk about that more at the end, but you can just bring up your own natal chart and gain some more information. And I would like to do a video on each of the planets. I just started with Saturn right now because there is a lot going on with Saturn. We had this Cazimi with Mercury and the Sun. Saturn died in the heart of the Sun and is being reborn in the sign of Pisces currently. And I learn a little bit more about Saturn myself when I prepare these presentations for you. So I hope you enjoy this. Subscribe if you want to see more information on planets, and even comment what planet you would like me to cover next. All right, so let's see if I can move this piece here out of the way. There we go. Saturn spends around 2.5 years in each zodiac sign, and the transits last about 6 weeks. So as I dive into these transits, just know you get in and you get out of them. They don't last forever. Saturn pushes us to work hard. So that's why a lot of people don't like Saturn. When we're having these Saturn transits, you've heard people talk about Saturn returns. Yes, they are challenging times, but there's a reason for them. Saturn teaches us things. Each time Saturn hits a degree in your chart, you will find yourself becoming dissatisfied with something. It brings awareness and allows you to seek change. So, how that impacts you is how you decide to respond. You can just choose to be miserable and say, oh, I'm in my Saturn return, life is terrible, everything is terrible. Or you could be in your Saturn return and say, you know what, this career is getting me nowhere. I think it's time for a change. All right, so think about how you respond. So I talked a little bit about the Saturn return. That happens around the ages of 29, 58, and 87. So when you are in the midst of your Saturn return, it's important that you stand back and just observe and take a look at where you are in your life. It's a good time for reflection. So when this is happening, if you are 29, think about the choices that you have made. Because you're 29, you still have a lot of life ahead of you. So if you're not happy with the choices that you made, it's time to make a change. Saturn forces you to sometimes make changes. So really think about, are you happy with career choices? Are you happy with your life? And a lot of people complain about their Saturn return because sometimes marriages are ending. Sometimes we're getting fired from jobs. Again, in the moment when those miserable things are happening to you, yes, they're miserable, but you will come out on the better side of things. Saturn gives you these things because Saturn really wants you to have everything that you deserve, everything that you desire. Of course, when you are 58 and you encounter your Saturn return, that is more of a reflection of your entire life. Many people are starting to consider retirement. What are they doing? Looking at the choices. Did I make the right job choices? Did I choose the right lover, the right husband? Where's my family at? Was I a good mother? Those are all the questions that people go through, and that's why Saturn returns can be challenging. But again, like I said, they get us out on the good side of things. So, main characteristics of Saturn. When someone's talking about Saturn in their chart, just think about it has to do with responsibilities, it has to do with work ethic, structure, time, wisdom, problems, and challenges. So Saturn is associated with Father Time, how time speeds or goes slow. So Saturnian people often have an inner struggle or a feeling of being a martyr. I put Britney Spears here. She does have Saturn in her first house. These are people that tend to be very disciplined, a belief that sacrifices will lead to more. There's a survival instinct and self-preservation. And we know that Britney went through some transformations there in her life where she did struggle with mental health and her life and people that were trying to control her and releasing that control. Teachers, bosses, father figures, people that thrive on structure and discipline are all Saturnian people. So in your natal chart, I have a previous video that shows you how to bring up your natal chart on AstroSeek. So I'm just going to give you an example here. In the natal chart, it can indicate placements of hardship or tension. So in this wheel, I have the inner circle, which is where the planets are located natally. And again, Saturn is this one that looks kind of like a T and an H. So that is where it can be found in the natal wheel. And if you click on transits, it will show you where Saturn is transiting. So right now, natally, I have Saturn in my second house. But currently, Saturn is transiting my ninth house up here. Okay, like I said, Saturn was with that star Scat, Mercury, and the Sun. So while Saturn is transiting, it can indicate challenges. Okay, but it really is assisting with getting you what you want. Like I said before, Saturn will bring about your manifestations, and the losses are what you do not want or need. So if you're losing a job, you're losing a lover, you're losing a friend or a house during a Saturn transit, it is meant to be. And like I said, you might be miserable at the time, but it's what you need and you will come out better in the end. All right, so we're going to talk about Saturn in your houses. So Saturn is happy when it's in Capricorn and Aquarius. It will be strong and have a greater impact on those houses when traveling. So I'm not going through all of those pieces. I'm just talking about houses 1 through 12 today. But when you bring up your natal chart and you find where Saturn is for you, you can come back to these slides and find out the impact of Saturn. So again, it will be strong and have a greater impact on those houses when traveling through. Saturn is not happy and tends to be weaker in the signs of Cancer and Leo. Saturn is in exaltation when it's in Libra. That means that Saturn may offer us gifts and blessings with little effort. And Saturn falls in the sign of Aries, which means Saturn will struggle and need to work harder to make it through. Okay, it's just not comfortable, it's not happy. And here is a quote from one of my favorite books, Planets in Transit. I use this often, it's by Robert Hand. When Saturn transits a house, you should pay great attention to the affairs of that house. It is not a sign that everything is going wrong, but find a way to relate to those affairs. So Saturn really is the great teacher, right? And sometimes those great teachers were not always our favorites, but they taught us a lot. All right, now we are going to jump into the houses. So what to expect with Saturn in your first house. You can expect natally heavy responsibilities. You are of a serious demeanor, determined, disciplined, may suffer from depression and low confidence. So the first house often relates to your youth. So these qualities may be overcome. So you may have had these feelings when you were younger, and maybe you have grown out of them. Okay, in the second house, if you have Saturn natally in your second house, your ambition is connected to material security and money. You are often cunning and prudent with money, good savers and investors. If you have it transiting in your second house, be aware of financial decisions and really consider what is it that you value. In the third house, natally, Saturn has to do with your mental processes, your communication. You may tend to have low confidence, but practical and honest people. You may also encounter possible delays in education. So go back and think, did you have problems with learning? What was school like for you? And if it's transiting in your third house, you might notice changes with your mind. You may see friction with your family or have difficulty communicating. So changes to your immediate environment, routines, or habits. So you might be changing something up which is kind of obnoxious to your family. In the fourth house, natally, you might have a responsibility in the home, taking care of family members. Maybe you are an older sibling that's taking care of younger brothers, or there's an elderly family member in the home. These people do not like change and they fear the unknown. They like solid roots. They sometimes tend to live in the past, but if they change their environment, they can seek happiness. And if you have Saturn transiting in your fourth house, you need to focus on your home and domestic life. You may have some parental responsibilities. You may have struggles with building a family. It is a good time for psychotherapy sessions. Negative factors at work can oppose your success, and it is a time of new beginnings and a fresh start. Saturn in the fifth house, these people tend to have difficulty relaxing and having fun. They're very serious. They find love is a serious thing and often brings them more pain than joy. Education of children might be difficult. You might have a child that has a learning disability that takes up a lot of your time. It's important that you are cautious with money and investments, and these people might seek older lovers because they just don't seem to really relate to people their own age. If you have Saturn transiting in your fifth house, you may see gains in communicating and expressing yourself. You may have difficulty with your own children at this time or difficulty with love affairs. You may come across an intense emotional encounter with someone, so pay close attention to that. That's Saturn sending you a Saturnian person on your path that's trying to steer you. So really be watchful of that. It's not a good time for gambling or risk-taking, and you may feel that you are withdrawn, but it's a good time for producing work. So if you're working on a project, writing a book, it's a great time for that. Okay, the sixth house is all about health. If you have Saturn in your sixth house natally, it has to do with employment and health. So you are a reliable, hardworking person. You may have slow progress in your career, but you are able to focus on details. And here's just a weird little tidbit. You may be prone to hypochondria. If you don't know what that is, these are people that always think they're sick all the time. They hear about an illness and they think that they have it. If you have Saturn transiting in your sixth house, you have a responsibility, and hard work may be quite overwhelming at this time. It's important you get everything in order to make the most impact. And at work, you may be feeling unable to live up to the expectations, which can leave you feeling discouraged. But Saturn wants you to keep it up, and it will pay off. So like I said, these transits are hard, they're challenging. If you do what you're supposed to do, you will make it through for the better. In the 7th house, natally, be careful with your intimate relationships. Often these people are not happy with long-term relationships and tend to get married later in life. It doesn't mean that you'll have a poor marriage, just that you go through many relationships till you find that right person. And you might be more attracted to someone that is disciplined and rigid. You may find a very Saturnian partner. And if you're going through a transit in your 7th house, you pay close attention to those partnerships and relationships. Other people may try to test you. Coworkers may make greater demands on you. And of course, Saturn wants you to just go ahead and do it. And you may also encounter some marital tensions as well. If you have Saturn in your 8th house, you may have restrictions with financial and sexual matters. These people tend to be strict. They have difficulty relating to a spouse, difficulty at work, but they are able to take on the responsibilities of other people. And if you are going through a transit in your 8th house, pay attention to your shared money and possessions. Become aware of other people's values. You can make connections with other people by knowing what they value and connecting with that. At this time, you can't count on others for material backing. You've got to really rely on yourself. You might have some concerns about your own mortality. And sometimes when people have an 8th house transit, don't want to scare you, but you might be going to funerals. Sometimes there might be deaths of others around you. So just be wary of that. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. 9th house, natally, these people have traditional views on religion, education, and business. They adhere to laws. Their work is precise. They have a talent for administrative functions. These are the people I like working for me. If you have a transit in this house, be cautious of legal difficulties and long journeys. If you're going on a journey for education or work, that's okay. Just be cautious if it is a fun, long journey. And you might be attracted to higher consciousness, philosophy, do some meditation, see what comes to you. In the 10th house, natally, you can be an ambitious character. You have a desire for recognition, and you have excellent organizational abilities, which can lead you to power. Now let's talk about transits. And some of you might already recognize this person here, Richard Nixon, and I'll get to him in a moment. If you are in a transit, it can be gained responsibility in career, good time for leadership, achievement, a good opportunity to make an impression. But if you took shortcuts or created opposition, it could lead to disaster. Do not be so consumed to avoid your personal life. So why do I have Richard Nixon here? So Richard Nixon resigned the presidency during his Saturn transit in his 10th house. And what happened to him, he took shortcuts. He made a lot of people unhappy and he created opposition, which kind of led to his downfall. He didn't put in the hard work like Saturn wants you to do. So that's why his picture is there. You got to put in the work to reap the rewards. If you try to cheat, if you try to make shortcuts, you're going to really find yourself struggling. 11th house, natally. These people have difficulty with achieving goals. They are patient, they have diligence, and they often have a lot of friends, but they lack that strong connection with them. And if you are going through an 11th house transit, you might find coworkers and friends are getting in the way. You might find that you want to withdraw yourself from society. You just like spending more time at home. People might give you more responsibility that you want. Saturn wants you to take it and do it. And if you've worked hard and prepared, then this should be a very fruitful transit. Saturn in the 12th house. We are now at the end. So natally, you might find yourself working within a large organization, but doing background work. For me, I'm thinking maybe like in a factory, someone that's part of a large corporation, but you're a small piece in it. So you will most likely receive little recognition for your work, sometimes doubting your own abilities, and these people tend to prefer solitude. If Saturn is transiting in your 12th house, it is not a good time for starting new projects. It is a time to let go and release things. Don't judge others, and it's better to look to the future instead of the past. All right, so thank you for watching my Saturn presentation today. I will post a link in the comments to my Etsy shop. That is where I do my astrology readings. So if you are interested in learning more or having a reading, I would certainly love to help you with that. But my goal also is to learn to help you help yourself. But I know sometimes you get stuck and you have questions, so I would be happy to help you out. So this was my very first video on the planets. I chose Saturn. Let me know if you would like to hear more. What planet would you like to hear about next? Leave me a comment. And if you want to hear more, I would love to have you subscribed. I'm just a little eeny-peeny person trying to get started in the big, wide astrology world. So thank you for tuning in and paying attention. I greatly appreciate it.